You're still searching for that breakthrough that always feels just out of reach. What is your true life path, and how do you finally find it? Welcome to Say It Anyway, the podcast where we help you unlock the breakthrough you've been waiting for so your true life path can finally come to life. Each week, we share powerful practical tools you can use right now to start transforming your life. You'll hear raw, honest conversations with people from all walks of life, people who found their way forward and are here to share mindsets, strategies, and wisdom that help them get there. I'm James Ferrigno. I've helped people reconnect with their power for years. I'll guide you beyond surface level solutions into a deeper way of seeing the world, one rooted in connection, courage, and open hearted dedication. This is your space to think differently, live boldly, and finally do the thing you were meant to do. Let's get started. Hello, welcome to Say It Anyway. I'm James Ferrigno, and our guest today is Lisa Guerin, the co-founder of Radiant Spaces.
Yes, hi. So happy to be here with you, James. Thanks so much for having me on today. As you mentioned, I am a co-founder of Radiant Spaces, and we are an energetic space clearing company where we work with the energy of land, of homes, offices, honestly, any space that might need some refreshing. And, we care for not only just the actual property and land, but all occupants who are going to be in that space. So we have always been driven by the mission that we like to share the tools and knowledge that we've gained through some of our education and training and share that with people to make their homes and spaces feel like a sanctuary.
Nice, nice. How did you first discover energetic space clearing and, what drew you to this profession?
That's a great question because if you were to have asked me even 5, 6 years ago if I would be operating a space clearing business, I would have laughed because I actually have a background in counseling and palliative care and hospice work. So for 20 years of my professional career, I was deeply immersed in caring for patients and families at the end of life. A lot of people say, well, how did you get to space clearing from, working in that arena? And I will say, though, as, working with families at a very difficult time, that there is a lot of energy that is present. And a lot of it can feel very intense and uncomfortable. And, I didn't at that time have a lot of tools to work with the energetics of what, conditions and environments I was in. And I had wished that I had had those tools. And I found my way to a very interesting school called the Academy of Intuition Medicine that's located in Sausalito, California. And it was just quite an oasis of tools and learning from, some very intuitive people and teachers where I got to learn a lot of different tools about working with energy and my own energy field. And so after I graduated from that certification, I was looking for ways to put it to use. And that's when I met my now business partner, Renee Eisen. And she had the idea that we could really utilize these energetic tools with spaces. And so she suggested us working together as a tandem, as a duo.
Yeah.
And, I had always been very sensitive, even as a child. I picked up on energies, when I was younger. Um, I remember when I was about 6 or 7 asking my mom about reincarnation and her not knowing what to do with those questions. So I had always had a sense that we are, spiritual beings living in a human embodiment and not the other way around. So once I had these tools from the Academy of Intuition Medicine, I agreed with Renee that, yeah, we could really help make people's spaces feel really good because it's such a place where we get nourished. And if we don't feel good in our homes and spaces, then we're bringing that out into the world. So if we can give people tools and knowledge to empower them to feel good and to let their spaces feel uplifted, then I thought, yeah, let's do this together. This sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I love that, empowering others to be able to do it because, in the end, it really comes down to us to make sure our environment, internally and externally, is what we need it to be. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yep, it's a both and for sure. Mhm.
yeah, I love the way you said that. So you're a Reiki master. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, yes. So, as I mentioned a little bit about working in hospice care, I was very drawn to just, the experience of not just the patient, but the family's emotional well being at this time, and was looking for ways that I might support families, even, outside of the social work role, so to speak. And so I connected with a teacher in San Francisco who taught Reiki, and she said, "Oh, you're a great candidate because you are working with people who probably could use some assistance energetically with what they're dealing with." And so I took classes from her, and I did become a Reiki master. So I went through this, several certifications, and I started actually using Reiki with patients and families. And it really was, I feel, very meaningful for them and provided a lot of like energetic release and support. And I noticed that the patients that were interested in having Reiki, they would report to me, days later that their pain levels were less. And
Mm,
so, yes, they were on pain medication, but sometimes they were still having experiences of discomfort. And I remember one gentleman had cancer that was in the bones and it was very painful for him. And I did a Reiki session. And the next day he said, "My pain is at 0. And when can you come back?" Yeah, so I knew that there was something to this energetic modality, and I just was really excited to continue to grow in it and to expand
mm,
it, and I do think that's what ultimately helped lead me to the Academy of Intuition Medicine, was
mm,
just knowing how powerful Reiki was, and so I was excited to learn that there's, even more energetic tools out there, that I hadn't discovered yet, so yeah, it all seems to, have, you know, dovetailed quite well.
mm. Yeah, it really came together, huh? As things do. Um, yeah, I'm a graduate of the academy myself. In fact, Renee was in my class there.
Oh,
Fortunately,
fantastic.
today, but um, so I'm interested in this the pain management. My experience with just seeing people in hospice or hospitals is that the painkillers that they're using, all the pharmaceutical painkillers, there really isn't anything that actually takes away the severe pain. At least in my experience that I've seen, even when people are given a lot of morphine, it doesn't
Mm,
eliminate the pain.
mhm.
And even my own personal experience was given very strong painkillers and,
Yeah.
lessened it.
Mhm.
But so I like, I'm interested that the Reiki could actually take it away entirely.
Yes,
At least that's a possibility.
it was pretty amazing that he had had such a big transformation of that level of discomfort,
Mhm,
um, and, one thing that I have learned too, is not that I'm an acupuncturist because I'm not, but I am, an acutonics practitioner,
mhm.
and acutonics uses the same meridian system that acupuncturists would, but we use sound tools. We use tuning forks instead of needles. And what I've noticed is that sound waves, of course, are a frequency. And because of their nature, they can actually penetrate very deeply into tissues, including into the bone, which is sometimes a harder place to reach when there's pain in a bone or marrow. And going back to just the Reiki, it's this idea that, I know that sound waves and energetic frequencies aren't something that we can see easily, but people experience the actual feeling of it. And there's no barrier like there would be with a needle. Can only go so far, right? You don't want to drive a needle in further than is appropriate because of anatomy.
Yeah.
But with sound waves and energy, that's not an issue. And
Mhm.
so because of that, I feel like it can get deeper and really move the stuck energy or the congested energy or where there is stagnation or whatever is happening where there's a pain um, area. So I feel like those two ideas really play into, yes, it can be more effective because of that,
Mm.
reasoning.
Yeah, I'm interested in the sound waves myself. I fairly recently became interested in the tuning forks and bought a couple of them. I read a little bit, but I really don't know what I'm doing precisely, but, just trying to use them. And, yeah, so have you worked with a lot of people with the tuning forks? And, what's been the result of that?
Yes, I'm very passionate about the tuning forks and the sound healing because I have experienced it not only, working with people, but myself, and it has been extremely effective for my own health conditions that I've been working on.
Mm,
Um, so acutonics it's a really elegant, beautiful system of working with a number of tuning forks at different hertz frequencies or
mm,
the rate at which something vibrates, and it produces different tones or notes. And so I like to say it's kind of like painting with sound. You get to use lots of different tuning forks in a session. They all do something a little bit different. There are actually forks that are made to help alleviate pain. There's
mm,
forks that actually are created to help cool down the body, or if someone's really cold, actually warm up the body. There are also forks that are great for relaxation, stress reduction, anxiety reduction. And interestingly enough, there's even forks that are created to help with releasing pain and trauma. So
mm,
it's a really interesting system with different sound waves. And, one of my favorite books is actually called There's No Place Like Om, OM,
mm, yeah,
which is all about the fact that our bodies they understand sound and they know
mhm,
what to do with it. So when a body receives sound, the sound, like a Reiki treatment would, goes to the right place. It just knows where to move. And if you're putting forks on a certain meridian point, it's going to access that meridian as a gateway and it's going to move throughout the body. And so sometimes I'll be working on, let's say, someone's feet, and they're saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm feeling it in my shoulder." And it's that sound moving all the way through a meridian and it can reach different
mhm,
places. So it's really effective. And what I love about it is it does not hurt. There's no pain in the gain here. You can
mhm,
have a really relaxing, lovely, effective treatment without having any sensation of discomfort because the sound is gentle.
mm, mm. Yeah, so I assume when you're doing a session with someone, you can do the Reiki, maybe use the tuning forks, and I think I read that you use, the bowls as well?
Yes, exactly. I
Uh,
can use a variety of tools because they all work together. So the Reiki, the sound from the bowls, the tuning forks, and so the tuning forks are used on the body, but also off the body in the auric field as well. So
mhm,
it's really nice that you have many different access points to help move energy and get things flowing again for the client.
okay. Yeah, I love that, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, why don't we swing back to the space clearing, so more of the external. Uh, Maybe can you describe what that is for someone who might not know might not really have a concept of, wait, what are they actually doing?
Absolutely. I like to say that we're mostly all space clearing, even if we don't know that we are, because space clearing is all about uplifting and shifting your space into a higher frequency of energy. And we can do that in many ways. It doesn't have to be complicated. When someone cleans their home and has gratitude for it and maybe brings in fresh flowers or plays music that is fun and inspiring, that's space clearing because that's elevating your space, that's bringing in positivity. And so I like to say that we're all kind of doing it. We just may not be aware of it, or we might not realize, the effect that it may even be having. I love to explain space clearing to clients who may not have that sense or that, vocabulary that, everybody has kind of a sense or a vibe when they walk into a place. For example, let's say someone just walked into a cathedral that just hosted a beautiful wedding. I bet they're going to feel a sense of awe or like enjoyment or uplift because something beautiful just happened there. And it's probably adorned with beautiful flowers and it just is going to have that vibe.
Hmm.
Whereas on the contrasting experience, maybe you've walked into a room where someone just had a conflict with someone, and there's that like common saying of, wow, you can really cut the, tension with a knife in here. So these feelings and these vibes are very palpable, I think, and we just don't necessarily connect it with space clearing, although we're experiencing it. We work a lot with realtors who are trying to either sell homes or get people to come and purchase them. And they'll say to us, we've staged it beautifully. We're doing open houses. We're, doing everything we can think of to advertise. And this place is just not finding its next, owners, or it's not selling. And we'll come in and we'll do a space clearing and really shift the energy, uplift it, move out old stagnant energy. And sure enough, usually within a short period of time, the places are purchased or they're sold. And they'll say, "Well, what did you do?" And we say, "Well, it's all about the vibration. We're gonna move some energy. We're gonna let go what needs to be released, and then we're gonna also bring in the positive intentions." Because you never want to just let something go. You want to bring in blessings too. So it's a two pronged kind of approach. And it's very effective. It really works. I like to also describe it as emotional weather, where, when go out into the world and sometimes we have not fun experiences or intense experiences, we may come back into our spaces and kind of carry that weather with us, right? Um, and our spaces collect the same imprint. So as we bring in energy, it's going to build up within our homes. So if we don't get, space clearings from time to time that are really intentional and focused, our spaces kind of collect all of that layering. So we're kind of clearing out the old weather and we're bringing in some sunshine.
Mm. That's a good idea. I haven't
Yeah.
done that to my house in a while. I think it's about time.
Yeah, well, give
Mm.
us a call.
So, what's the connection as you see it between a space and the people who are there, who are in the space, who maybe live or work there?
Yeah, there's a I feel like there's definitely a connection. Um, I feel like, when we are living in a space, it's such a nurturing place for us to be. Hopefully, when we go into our homes, wherever that may be, it's kind of the place where we can really like relax and allow our guard to come down. Because when we're out in the world, there's a lot of energy and a lot of people and a lot of things that we have to contend with. And so when we're at our own home space, hopefully that's a place where it does feel good or that it can be a place of relaxation. But it does depend on who else is there with us. We might have people living with us or roommates or pets, and we kind of are adding to the equation now, right? So it's not just ourselves, it's all these other energies. And so sometimes, energies are kind of building up that might not be the most conducive to relaxation or sanctuary or feeling good. And so we may need to address that, whether that's sometimes, um, you know, a change in the occupants or working with someone individually. I've actually worked with a lot of people who've had roommate situations where it wasn't feeling very harmonious. And so they wanted some help energetically. And
Hmm.
I will tell you, the power of focused intention is extraordinary. And we've seen a lot of huge transformations in a short amount of time. So we like to say that it's not about energy being bad or good. It's really about what's going to serve people's highest good. And we talk about it in terms of more like stagnant energy and flowing energy. And so our goal is to help the energy to be in flow and in harmony. So we're not so much concerned about, oh, there's negative energy in your home. It's more like, how do we get things to flow? How are we going to harmonize here? And that's our focus. And that seems to have worked very, very well for our clients.
Yeah, you got what you focus on. So,
Yeah, you absolutely do. Where your intention goes, right? There, the energy is flowing.
absolutely. So does how does your intuition guide you when you're doing a clearing, working with someone?
It's definitely a main tool that we use, and so when Renee and I get invited, and we always say invited because it does feel like an honor to be invited into someone's space, whether that's a home space, a workspace, even if someone wanted us to do like a venue, things like hotels and meeting spaces like that. It's always an honor because it is a more intimate thing. You're coming in, you're seeing someone's belongings and pictures and, meeting family and or friends, pets. So we always first, express our gratitude for the opportunity to be part of that experience with someone and their family or who their occupants are. And we always also start with a land acknowledgement. Actually, I don't think I mentioned this yet, but as we know, like we're in the Bay Area, right, of California today, and around us were many different native tribes, including like the coastal Miwok tribes, especially around San Francisco. And they were the first settlers here. And so a lot of times when we use our intuition, we tune in and we often feel Native American energy because it's present. It's very strong in the land here. And so to start, we often will do an acknowledgement of the fact that those tribes were the original, stewards of the land. And we always ask to harmonize with the energy. We're not trying to move the energy out and away because it's not negative. It's
Mhm.
simply that sense of honoring. And that has been very powerful for a lot of places where maybe that hadn't been done before, where the energy is very intensified in some places. So our intuition definitely guides us as to when to bring that part in. And then we also take some time to meditate with the space. We actually ask the space energetically for permission to do some work with it. And I think we've only ever had one space that we got to know that it
Oh,
wasn't time to work on it. And so we honored that. Every other time we got a yes, please help, or please work with this energy signature. So our intuition is very important, and then it also is something where as we tune into a space and the land around it, because whenever we do a space clearing, we don't leave out the perimeter. We'll do the whole thing, so we don't just skip a part or anything. And we go room to room, so we make sure we hit all the different areas and oftentimes we get information from spaces. We have gotten some very interesting things, like some spaces have wanted certain colors in the home. And that gets communicated to us because for whatever reason, those colors have a vibration that the space wants. Sometimes I get information about certain sound, like this house needs a Tibetan singing bowl because the house really likes that vibration. Or sometimes we'll get, certain crystals that would be beneficial to the space. That actually comes through quite a bit. And we'll get very specific, what we call crystal prescriptions and we'll share that with the owner and the occupants. And what we've noticed is that when we make these recommendations for after the clearing, we check in with all of our clients about a week afterwards just to make sure those positive shifts have been happening. And it's amazing what the shifts are and the changes are even within a week, sometimes 2 weeks.
very, very interesting. I love that.
Yeah.
It's made me think about in my life what I've done in the past and people I've worked with that having the environment be what you want it to be and having the environment be something that helps support you rather than drags you down or takes energy from you in some way is kind of it's really one of the bedrocks to really your own success, career, health, and all the other things that we want to achieve in life. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yes, that's a really, really great point, James. It really is. You really have drilled down to the fact that, we're talking about um, setting ourselves up for success and,
Hmm.
and not just in, one area or a couple areas, but really a foundational part, which is our spaces and places where we hopefully, get the um, rejuvenation that we need to go out into the world and do hopefully all the wonderful things we want to do. And I agree with you that, when your space feels good and the energy's flowing and it feels positive and you've got focused intention and gratitude happening in your space, I really do feel like doors just open up in your world and you're moving in the flow of the universe instead of against it or, struggling and um, just not having the wind at your back, so to speak. So, I really do feel like gratitude is one of those foundational pillars that we have found when people have gratitude for their space. That is a really powerful intention and a powerful force. And sometimes people have had houses and spaces that have given them a lot of problems. Like maybe there's a lot of repairs that keep having to be done, or there's
Hmm.
issues, going on in the neighborhood and it doesn't always feel so great. Sometimes people have conflicts with their neighbors.
Hmm.
And there's all sorts of things that can make people not feel so great about their space. And
Hmm.
sometimes we'll say, if you can't get to gratitude, can you get to neutrality? And let's begin there instead of having, you know, um, any sense of just resentment, for their spaces. And we found that when people could either get to neutrality and then move into gratitude, huge shifts started happening. Problematic neighbors started being friendlier or even just decide to move away and new fun neighbors move in or roommates that were problems all of a sudden are finding a new place to go or new people are coming in. And it's really fun to just see like how the universe is moving all these pieces on the chessboard, so to speak. And by unlocking these more positive vibrations, more follows. It magnetizes and brings in a lot of opportunity and really beautiful developments. So it's really nice to be able to help people feel like they're not stuck. Um, in fact, some people have come to us and said, "We don't think that this space is ever going to be cleared and feel good, and we think it might be cursed." And so
Hmm.
we get that a lot. And oftentimes, what we found is that no, there's no real quote unquote curse. It's just a lot of buildup of old energy that just needs to be shifted. And, we have some funny stories about getting calls from even offices in the Bay Area where they're like, "Nobody wants to sit in this particular office. Everyone thinks that it's got, like, bad vibes, and can you come and clear it? Because we really need to use this office space or this conference room." And we'll do our service, and then, they're, like, fighting over who can move into the office afterwards. They're like, "Oh, it feels so much better." So, yeah, it can happen very quickly, which is nice.
That's fantastic. I happen to have this situation going on in my house right now, and I'm going to ask you about it, and then hopefully um, it can be instructive for other people. So for about 2 months now, I've had just incredible problems with the house I live in, and it started out with me having a few bites, and then it turned out there were mites, and it turned out there were rat mites, and then it turned out there were rats, and it turned out they were in the walls, and blah blah blah. So it's been months of
Mm,
pest control and just endless things and
mhm,
traps and poisons, and I've been trying to do blessings, and do energetic things. And then it's like there's rats, and then they're in the heater, so you can't use the heater, and then stuff's coming up through the vents. Anyway, it's just been just a nightmare, right?
mm,
Just
mhm,
goes on and on, right? And most of my time for the last month, I'd say, has been spent cleaning things, washing things,
mm,
fixing things, calling people. And it started to take up way too much time. So that some of my comfort and love of the space has deteriorated, and it's started to turn into some anger is coming up and
mhm,
a real negative feeling about the space. And I realize that I'm contributing to it, but how can I get out of that? I liked what you said about just being neutral first,
mhm.
trying to get to some space like that. And but it's interesting that we're doing this interview right now while this happens to be occurring. So and I think it has affected other areas in my life. But I'm certain it's having some effect on things. Um, and I mean, I stayed pretty positive through all of it and
Mhm.
with it and accept it. But at a certain point, it's exhausting. So
Sure,
I don't know.
sure.
Is that, have you encountered situations like that? What would you do?
Mhm.
What for something like that?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I'm sorry to hear that you've been going through those challenges. That is tiring and it is difficult, especially because there's variables that probably feel a little out of control. Like with the pest that you're dealing with. It's like one thing to control your own behavior and experience in the home, but another thing when there's something coming in, it's like it's an intrusion.
Yeah.
You're dealing with an intrusion. Yeah, and that's a very on a basic level, it's kind of it is a violation of your space.
Hmm.
So to honor that first, to just understand like, yeah, that's really um challenging and uncomfortable and like you said, pretty tiring, pretty taxing.
Yeah.
And yes, we do get, people calling us with, they're saying all of a sudden our house is experiencing ABC issue. Um so sometimes it's pests, sometimes it's we have a lot of people call because of water intrusions, leaks and floods and pipes bursting, and they don't know why that's happening. And so
Mhm.
one thing that Renee and I will always do is we will tune into your space and we do a holistic kind of assessment intuitively where we look at um, we feel what the energy currently is. So we're looking for the current frequency and we're
Mhm.
tuning in, tapping in, and really um, identifying it and going, okay, it feels pretty good here, 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 but oh, over here, we're feeling some of that stagnation or congestion of energy. So we know we have to figure out what's going on there. And then we also look at the elements, earth, air, water, fire, ether.
Mhm.
We do check on the energetics of the elements. And sometimes an element is out of balance. So again, for like homes with a lot of like plumbing issues, we might need to work on the water element or people having like foundational problems or cracks in the house or things going on with the land, we might look at the earth element
Mm.
and so on and so on. Fire obviously for fire or things happening in the house. So with yours it might be an earth element issue. I'm not sure, I'd have to like do my tuning in process, but yeah, we would look at that for you and we would try to pinpoint where the imbalance might be. And then if it's strictly energetic, we'll let you know. Sometimes it's, a combination of factors. It might be that there are just physical things to do, like, said area needs this particular intervention with. I understand like rats and things, they don't like peppermint oil. So we might say, have you thought about spraying some peppermint oil? Like real um just, physical things to do. And then energetically, we might look at that part of the house and say, okay, it needs, you know, uplifting. So we're going to give you some crystals that are going to help raise the vibration. And hopefully, as the vibration raises, it's naturally going to provide you with solutions to restore that balance where those pests aren't coming in anymore.
Mm. Wow, good, good.
Yeah. So we can look at it from a few different angles. Hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I've noticed in the past, this may sound a little weird, but when this happened before, it was like so clear that it was someone living here kind of had,
Hmm.
let's not good intentions and kind of this manipulative behavior that was going on beneath the
Hmm.
surface. I think it was very rat like energy. I
Yeah.
remember that
Yeah.
happening before. So I was kind of looking for that, but I'm not seeing that. So it'd be something else. I
Yeah,
also
it is
did see that
interesting
it's
though.
nationwide. There's
Mhm.
a nationwide huge rat infestation since January.
Very interesting. Yeah, so it could be, also a collective energy too, like looking at, you know, groups of energies and being like, "Hmm, what is going on with these quote unquote energetic intrusions?" Right? Where are we feeling invaded or violated as a collective? And maybe look into that too versus, individual experiences popping up. So yeah, because if you think about it, I love this quote by I think it's Nikola Tesla, who says, "The secrets of the universe are always found in your energy and vibrations and frequencies. So in my mind, I'm always going, oh,
Mm.
what's the energy, vibration, and frequency of said situation? How do
Yeah.
we reverse engineer, to get back to balance?
Oh, I love that. That is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, have you had like, without breaking client confidentiality, has there ever been an experience you had where that was memorable and um, where you were doing space caring and it had an impact on you?
Yes. Absolutely. I do remember being invited to do a space clearing for a wonderful client who was the owner of like I think a double level, like a duplex.
Mm.
And so she wanted to rent out one side of it and then keep the other side for herself. And it was in a beautiful neighborhood. So the neighborhood was just very appealing. The house itself was really nice. She had done some remodeling. She had added a beautiful garden outside. And so it was really lovely. And it was like a very sunny neighborhood. So it had great weather. And she could not rent out that part of her building no matter what she did. And she just said, okay, I need to call in somebody because I don't understand. Like, what else can I do? It's beautiful. She was a very sweet person, so I think she'd be a fantastic landlord. It was clean, it was sunny, it had flowers. I mean, it was checking a lot of boxes. It was affordable. So we came in, and I immediately was drawn to go to the primary bedroom area of the home. And I felt, James, such a wave of grief. Like it almost brought tears to my eyes. I was really impacted right away. And oftentimes I can be in a very neutral state when I'm in someone's home and have really good energetic protections up and boundaries. But I really felt like sobbing. It was very unusual. And so I started to use some sound instruments, which are excellent at doing some really deep clearing. And I was, going through some of my tools. I was in this space and I just started to almost feel as if it had been a previous owner. Like I felt the energy of a previous owner, and I thought it had something to do with a death, some sort of grieving experience. So as we were moving through the space and doing our work, at the end, I asked the owner, I said, would you mind telling us if there's any history about this building?
Mm.
I've, experienced this feeling of deep grief, and I felt it was from a previous owner. And she said, you're correct. I don't want to say anything to you guys, but there was a gentleman who lived here who was a dad, and he had a son that went off into World War II. So it was that time
Mhm.
period. And his son never came home. His son died overseas in the war. And he was so brokenhearted. He actually passed away in that bedroom. And the neighbors really were so sad about it. They said she had heard stories that the father died of a broken heart over his son. And I felt it, James. I really did palpably feel that experience in the space. So I knew that space was just holding on to it. And so I was really happy that we could help her just move that energy on. We honored it, but then we also, moved it into the light. And within, I want to say like a week, maybe week and a half, she contacted us and she said, I have found the perfect tenant. I am so happy. They're moving in. Like it just, that needed to happen in order for this person to feel magnetized to the place. And she contacted us a year after we did that space clearing and said, I just want to let you know, I still have that same tenant. The tenant is wonderful. We are so happy. It's very harmonious. The house feels great still. Thank you so much for what you did because it really made a big difference. And that story really touched me. Um, and especially to know that, she had such a wonderful situation happen after the clearing with the new person moving in. So, yeah, it can be very transformational, you know.
I've that's great. I've had some experiences myself with spaces, and uh, there's some spaces that feel really, really good. Like for me, I just Hawaii, for instance. It's like I can just feel it. It's just
It's a
so
magical place.
yeah, right. And and other places, rooms especially can be. I've had some that there was this one in my grandmother's house that was just always scared me as a kid. And then it came to learn years later that my great grandmother was in bed in that room for like 10 years or over 10 years,
Mhm.
dying and
Oh,
miserable.
yeah,
So, and someone who's dying for that long, there's something else going on there clearly, but
yeah.
that always scared me as a kid, I remember. And I've been in other spaces like that too. It's interesting. And, yeah, so, and I've always wondered, is like the space, you know, in the universe, or is like, are the objects like in the room soaking up the energy of the person or something, or reflecting it back? And I've wondered about that. Do you have any sense of that?
That's a really great question. I really like that question because it's so thoughtful and insightful because I do think it's a both and experience. I do feel like the space energetically, like just as a container, as an energetic field,
Mhm.
absorbs imprints of energy. But I also think objects can be imbued with energy. If you think about, like, let's say someone who has a what they call a special talisman, and they imbue it with meaning, and that talisman then for them becomes something energetically powerful, whether that's for good or bad, whether they imbue it with like, oh, this is my protecting object, or the idea of people infusing right things into
Yeah.
jewelry or crystals or whatever you would like to name. So I feel like it's both, where the energetic field itself is holding imprints, and then our furniture, our objects, even our clothing, hold things. It's really interesting, James, when we've recently done some homes that really, we noticed that there was some really stagnant energy there, which is very common. We were drawn right away to people's closets. Interestingly, our closets hold our clothes, right? Our shoes, our purses, our bags.
Mhm.
And Renee and I have found that we've had to do a lot of clearing in people's storage spaces as well. And I was thinking about that. I was like, well, it makes sense because the clothing that we're wearing out into the world, we're collecting energies as we're moving through time and space and different experiences. And then it comes back to like a pretty tightly enclosed space with
Mhm.
probably not a lot of airflow. It's not like it probably, is getting sunshine and getting all, nature. So it makes sense that those areas can be supercharged. And we have been finding that the closets are often hotspots, so to speak. So yeah, it is interesting. I do think it's a combination of factors there.
Okay. Yeah, I've always wondered if the walls are soaking up, the grief or whatever it is. And if they're,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's interesting. The actual space itself as well. Yeah, and it's interesting. I went to the academy as well, and there they teach you to do neutral separations from other people, so you can separate from others' energy that you encounter in the world. And
Mhm.
I've always done that, but it's interesting to think that there could be energy in my clothing that I haven't really paid attention to that.
Mhm. Yeah, it is true. It's not something I think that we naturally think of, Um, and it doesn't mean, because again, there's a lot of varied experiences, and there can be such positive experiences. I remember when one client was like, you know, tell me what you feel when you're in the closet. And Renee and I both zeroed in on one blouse that she had. And we, brought it to her and we said, this blouse is carrying a lot of intense energy. And she said, well, that makes sense. I had, such and such a conflict with a certain person while wearing that blouse. And, there's a part of me that wondered if I should get rid of it. And he looked at us and we were like, good idea. Sometimes you just need to get things in and out of literally your space. And yet other times you could have worn, let's say, an outfit to a really exciting thing, maybe, a wedding or a party, and it's supercharged with that wonderful vibration. I used to joke that one of our clients had a shirt that they wore where it was like their lucky shirt. And so we
Uh-huh.
called it the mojo shirt, like whenever they wore it, like great things were happening. And it was just really imbued with such positivity. So, yeah, it's kind of fun in a way to start to think about ways that we can focus our intention and help support our own success by clearing what needs to be cleared and then bringing in what we want to manifest. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had some awareness of that throughout my life, and when people, uh, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that, but I've haven't really had a super focus. I'm gonna go back, I think, through all my stuff with a more focused attention on that because I've got well, this person, that was something bad, and I get rid of it, but
Mhm.
everything, it'd be good to
Oh,
go.
no, no, of course.
We get to
Most
well,
most energy can clear and you don't have to
yeah,
literally get rid of things, but sometimes when something is just so baked in, sometimes it is one of
yeah.
those things where it's like, we can shift it, but sometimes it is a good time to start over, whether that be an item or um, something kind of
Mm.
bigger moving in.
To, but to either get rid of it or clear it rather than just, I guess, not doing anything. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting. Really interesting. So, what shifts have you noticed in your own energy after completing like a really intense clearing? Have you noticed things happen to you personally?
That's a really great question. I think when I first, started doing energetic space clearings, it's definitely a learning curve. I had all these tools, which I was really grateful for, and had experience being a Reiki master, so I felt very attuned and sensitive to different energy frequencies, and I think that was very helpful for me to have that as just some base, experiences.
Hmm.
But sometimes when you're in a space that had a lot of conflict or trauma or something very intense happened there, um, it can wear on your own energy if you're not careful.
Hmm.
So Renee and I really work hard to make sure that we are protected energetically when we go into spaces because we don't always know, you know, we might hear we do an intake form with every client so we get a sense of what the issues are, but sometimes you don't really understand the degree of intensity until you're in a physical space.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, and then you're like, "Whoa." Sometimes I've been in spaces where I started to feel a little bit dizzy or disoriented myself, which told me I need to get more grounded and to get more clear, and so I would, go through steps to do that. But it surprised me, just how powerful the force of that energy was, that it really started to affect my own sense of neutrality. Yeah, so it can definitely happen, and now I feel like, because we have 5 years under our belt of hundreds of clearings, I feel like I have, a really good idea of what I need to do personally in order to prepare, in order to go into a space clearing and come out not depleted or not carrying other, energy that's not my own, so that I can really be in my own space of frequency. And I will say, like, sometimes carrying crystals with us has become very important. There are some crystals that are excellent at, cleansing energies around you. One of our favorites is smoky quartz.
Hmm.
So if you've not been familiar with that, smoky quartz is of the quartz family,
Hmm.
and it's known for its ability to, um, if there's any like stagnant energy around, it is so excuse me, it's so high vibrational, it can really like shift the energy around you. And so
Hmm.
it's a wonderful stone if you feel like you're in an intense place or space, or you're traveling, you're not sure what your hotel room is gonna feel like, or your Airbnb or VRBO or wherever you're going. It's a good one to have on you. So I like to have one of those with me when I'm going out in the field.
Yeah, okay. So that's good advice. Uh,
Yeah.
we look into that. So ask you a final question.
Mhm.
If you can leave our listeners with one piece of advice for creating a nice, harmonious living and working environment, what would it be? what practical things could they do?
Great question. I would love to give your listeners a few tips.
Hmm.
So, this comes out of both my training as an intuitive medicine practitioner, but also I've been trained in sound healing and Renee's been trained in feng shui. And so, I'll give you a tip from each of those modalities. So, from the sound world, sound is one of the quickest ways to shift energy into a higher elevation or higher frequency. And so, if you don't have any instruments in your house, that's okay. You can actually clap. You can clap your hands and do it in every corner of each room, and that is actually gonna shift some energy pretty quickly. If you
Hmm.
do have any instruments like either Tibetan singing bowls or crystal bowls or chimes, chimes are very, wonderful and effective at moving out stagnant energy, and they're great to do at your front door. So that can really help bring some positive, high frequency energy to your space. So another tip from the feng shui world is that your front door is considered the mouth of qi or the mouth of energy. And
Hmm.
so one thing that you can do to have just some fresh energy flowing at the door of your home is to either have fresh plants that are colorful outside and healthy outside of your front door, or a nice welcome mat that's really clean and uplifting for you. So just little touches like that bring a lot of good energy to the front of your home, which is that mouth of chi. And then a third tip energetically goes back honestly to that foundational pillar of gratitude, because spaces love to be loved, just like we love to be loved. And when you do have focused gratitude for your space or even neutrality, if you're not able to get to gratitude, that's okay.
Hmm.
That is a good place to begin to shift energy and to start magnetizing more positive things. So, those would be some tips that I would give the listeners to help elevate their space.
That sounds good. Thank you, Lisa.
My
Uh,
pleasure.
Appreciate you being on the show today. And I think we had a great conversation. I learned some important things and really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be a guest and excited to connect with you.
Mm.
And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. This has been a conversation with Lisa Guerin. And this is Say It Anyway with James Ferrigno. James Ferrigno here. And it would be great if you guys could subscribe, like, follow whatever platform you're seeing this on, because that really helps me be able to continue the podcast. And so if you can do that, that would really help us out. Thanks a lot.